Continuing our discussion, now we will look at iterables and iteration in Python. So the way we do this is known as looping, and for the Python has for loops and while loops. So let's jump over and take a look at that. Iteration is a very valuable concept in programming. So in programming we often need to do something over and over and over again, and that's how this is the method by which that is actually done. So let's go to our Visual Studio Code, and you can see there is a little bit of difference. So I basically have I am basically going to window and open a new terminal up, and that, let's clear that up, and that basically opens a terminal window right inside the Visual Studio Code. This is a PowerShell window, by the way, just for the curious, and this basically has the same functionality of same and enhanced functionality, I should say, of standard command prompt. So instead of going to the command prompt and running the commands that way, I can just run it from directly here. You can also go to terminal and say run active file. That will run your that is equivalent to double clicking on your file. So now we will run our Python code directly from within Visual Studio Code. But let's march ahead. So for in order to run a for loop, so in order to do something over and over again, we first need to create a list. So let's create a list. I am going to do a very simple example first, and then I'll build on from there. So we have a list now, and let's say I want to print out the elements of this list one at a time. So the way we do this is we can ask Python to basically walk over this list. So walk over this list one at a time. So it will take the first element first, and then the second element, and then the third element, and then it will execute a piece of code with that element. So I'll explain how that works. So we don't need we don't need a bracket here. For I in ML and a colon and then an indented block. That is how iteration or for loop works in Python. Print I. So let's think for a moment what this is doing. So what this means is that take one element out of this list and store that in I, and then print I, and then go back and do the same thing with the second element, and do the same thing with the third element, and so on. So this kind of reads as it would read in English. So for I in ML, print I. So in English also this makes sense, right? So for each element of this array or this list, repeat whatever is in here. So if I run this, so we have to first go to our folder here and then run the thing. You didn't save. Okay, so you can see that 3 elements were printed, and I can put any number of anything in here, cow and true. You will see that they will all be printed. So you can see that all of those were printed. So this is the absolute basic concept of a for loop. So the for loop takes anything that is inside the list, and then it can work over the list, and you can work with the items of the list individually. So let's use this now to print out, or let's use this for loop to create or to print factorial of n. So I'll ask the user for a number n, and then I will print out the factorial of that number. Keep in mind that factorials do scale up very quickly, so don't put any large numbers. I should not put any large numbers in here. So I'll first ask I'll have my standard thing for inputting a number. please input a number, colon space, and then let's think how a factorial is defined. So factorial of I, what is it? It is 1 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3 multiplied by dot 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 up to n, right? Sorry, I, right? So this is the definition of factorial. Now how we can do this? So what we can do is create a list. So we take the number n from the user and create a list of 1 till I, and then keep on multiplying. So in a loop, keep on multiplying it. So this is one way of doing this. So let's implement that. So let's, as I implement, maybe it will become a little bit more clear. So we will first need to create a list, right? So we'll say num list is equals to, we'll use the range function. You remember the range function? So range function, remember, gives us a list of 0 through I, but the I is not included. So the range of I would give us numbers from 0 through I minus 1, but we want a range from 1 to I. So the way we do this is, so one way of approaching that is, so we will say inp plus 1, and then we will slice off the first element. So we will convert this to a list, and then we will slice off the first element. So you remember the slicing syntax. So num list is equals to num list 1 colon. So just to check, let's first, so I'll comment that out. I think yes, that is the correct way of doing it. So in Visual Studio Code, you can press command slash, and that will do the commenting for you. You can select it and comment it that way. So let's print out this first to see if our program is working. Let's save that and run it. So please input a number 5. Oh, okay, I didn't put a number, sorry about that. 5. Okay, I didn't print anything, so I'll have to print num list here. Save that and run it. Okay, so you see that is correct. So 1 2 3 4 5, that is exactly what you want. Now what we have to do is we have to multiply 1 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 5. So what we will do here is, for I in num list, not print I, but what we will do is I, so we'll have to first create another variable for holding the result. So we'll say fact, or just say result equals to it cannot be 0. If it is 0, then multiplying that with anything would result in 0. So it will forever will become 0. So we'll keep 1 here, and then for I in num list, result is equals to result multiplied by I. And then we will print the result. Okay, let's see what happens. So 5, and yes, 5 factorial is 120, right? Okay, I should comment that out. We don't need that anymore. My keyboard is a German one, so sometimes get very confused of how to put proper numbers, proper symbols in. But anyway, so that's how you can use this concept of iteration to do a factorial calculation. Do that again. So let's say let's put a little bit of a larger number, 19. This will be a large number. So 19 factorial is that. You can check if you wish. So that is how we can do this factorial. There are, of course, there are better ways of doing this. There are other ways. There are lots of other ways of doing this. You can write this code in much more write this code much more concisely, but for explanation's sake I have done this a little bit more elaborately. What I can also do is I can show you the different so if I put print result here, what do you think will happen? So as the loop is executing, every time it will print the result. So you will see 1 multiplied, so first it will print 1 and then it will multiply that by the next number, which is 2. So you will see 1 multiplied, which is 2, and then it will print 1 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3. So it will each time it will print, it will multiply and then it will print. So you will basically see a list of factorials, so 1 factorial, comma 2 factorial, comma 3 factorial, and so on. So let's run that, let's say 10, and you can see these are the factorials from 1 to 10. So that is how this variable result is evolving through the loop. So I can actually demonstrate that by doing a little bit of a thing. So I can print out the number of iteration. So this is done using enumerate. So what I am writing here is not very important if you don't understand it, but the result will be a bit more enlightening probably. So you will understand how the loop is working. How I am writing this, or the syntax that I am writing, is not super important, so don't worry about that, I would say. So print. So now if I run this, so you can see that this is how it is actually working. So at the 0th iteration the value of result is 1, and at the first iteration the value of result is 2, and so on. So as this loop repeats itself over and over again, this result is being multiplied using that array. So I'll print that array as well for you, and let's run that again. Okay, I should clear this first, make that a little bit larger, and let's, okay, I might run it from here because the fonts are larger here, so I'll do that. So this I'm doing this just for anyone who is still struggling to understand the concept of repeating a loop over a list. So Python for 10. So we have this list, right? And at each time, you just notice how the variable result is evolving. So at the first, when we're doing for the first time, the value of result is 1 because that is what we started out with. Okay. And then it is multiplied by the second element, so 1 multiplied by 2 is 2, and that 2 is stored inside of the result now. So now the value of result is 2, and now that is then in the next iteration that value is multiplied by 3, the next element. So that becomes 6. So now result is 6. So in the next iteration, that is multiplied by the next element, which is 4. So 6 multiplied by 4 is 24, and so on, so on, so on, and so on. That's how iteration works. And you can see how this naturally evolves to an algorithm of computing the factorial. It's very natural, because it's just repeat over the numbers and multiply them all together, and you have your factorial. Okay, so there you go. If you are still struggling to understand what an iteration is, play around with this, ask me, ask my brother, whoever you want, and hopefully you will understand how to work with the for loop. It's very important. Next we will look at the while loop, and we will take it from there.